As a German, I'm not speaking as opposed to everybody here on the panel and most in the room here as a neighbor of the Mediterranean region. So Germany seems to be comparatively remote from the issues at hand. Really? On a second thought, this is not true, at least not anymore. Yesterday morning we heard, I think Monsieur Azoulay mentioned it, the words, La Méditerranée est là, ce matin. The Mediterranean is here, and this also goes for Germany. And the recent years have, by means of the Euro crisis and the Arab revolutions, made it clear to us that, politically speaking, we are also living on the shores of the Mediterranean. Migration from Turkey, from Arab countries, but also from Southern Europe is another factor. Germany is part of the Euro-Mediterranean sphere. Have we realized this in the German media and acted upon it? No, we are just beginning. For my own paper, at least I can say we have finally hired several journalists with backgrounds that reflect these changes. We are much more diverse than we used to be. You can find Arab, Turkish, Italian, Spanish names in our masthead now. By the way, our editor-in-chief is Italian. But I would like to focus on a different aspect of the changes, one that was already touched upon yesterday, the rise of the new media and social media and how it affects people like me. I work in the so-called old media, or dead tree media, as my digital colleagues like to tease us. So new media and social media, in my journalistic practice, they are connected to human rights issues. I found them very powerful tools for campaigning. For 8 years, I have my own personal blog on the company's website now. I began blogging because I wanted to spread the word about an Iranian friend who had been arrested. And by the way, we managed with an international campaign to free him in the end, and the internet played an instrumental role in it, in mobilizing for this friend. I joined Facebook some 5 years ago, late I admit, but still, because of a campaign for another Iranian friend in trouble. There's no happy ending here. He's still in jail, and he has been sentenced for 19 years for blogging. I use these outlets like my blog and Facebook for other things too, but still I feel strongly about blogs and social media as tools for human rights issues. But my actual blogging, posting and commenting has also made me aware about a darker side of these media. Let me explain. One of the topics I deal a lot with is immigration and Islam in Europe. I write about everything from the Danish cartoons to the rise of Salafis in Germany to the discussion around mosque building projects and also secular Muslims, if you allow such a conundrum. I encountered xenophobia on an unprecedented scale in the debates about these issues, and mostly online. We also get written xenophobic, Islamophobic mail, but it's a totally different story online. I don't have to remind you that the culture of blogs did not just give us freedom fighters like some of them who are here from Tunisia, Egypt, and so on, but also the likes of the infamous Fjordman and Anders Breivik, the Norwegian mass killer. His ideology was fed by another culture of blogs and digital exchange that also, I think, is something that has to be addressed. In Germany, Islamophobic extremists and the extreme right are learning fast how to use social media. Salafis, by the way, too. The reason for this is obvious. These media are ideal for identity politics. That is part of their force, part also of their problematic nature. People can wrap themselves in self-selected groups where they only meet with like-minded others who care for the same issues, share the same values, and sometimes believe in the same conspiracy theories. I should mention that I'm an editor for a weekly paper that was already outlined, an old-styled broadsheet paper with one of the oddest and most old-fashioned attitudes towards the digital world. For us, it's print first, and when I started blogging on our paper's website, I had to practically hide it from my boss. If you have time for this, he said, I'm doing something wrong. He found it hard to believe that I was actually working, researching, making important contacts online. This attitude has changed slowly over the last 8 years, but the general attitude in our paper is still about concentration on our journalistic product first. Try for excellence in reporting, analysis, commentary, essay. Don't try to be part of the buzz of the online world for its own sake. Take time if you need it. And this strategy has been successful, surprisingly successful also economically, contrary to conventional wisdom. Because when I joined the paper 15 years ago, people were telling us, you know, what, a weekly paper? Who needs a weekly paper? It's ridiculous. I mean, have you heard about the internet? There's something called the internet. Forget it. You're boarding a sinking ship. But we're still floating, and we're doing quite well. And maybe, I sometimes think, nowadays, because of that, as a means of slowing down, getting deeper into issues, excluding hype, and focusing on important issues. So I'm speaking from a viewpoint of old media that should have long been extinct by now. As opposed to many daily papers, two were just mentioned by Ignacio, we are striving so far. Still, I have written many stories about the so-called blogosphere, and many others of my stories were informed by social media, by stuff that I learned online, issues that I was made aware by some of my Facebook friends, for example. It has really changed the way I work. At the same time, I have kept blogging, posting, commenting, while trying to save some of the qualities of print in the new media. Something like long-range memory, fairness, civic discourse in the debate, hearing the other side out. And it's not that easy. I will come back to it shortly later. I would like to propose, because we were asked to make proposals here in our little speeches, I would like to propose some mutual lessons that different types of media can learn from each other. First, let me outline what old media have to learn, I think, from new social media. At first, I think, be more responsive. Redefine accountability. It's not just about writing a letter back to someone who writes a letter to you, like in the old days. What's needed is a more direct exchange with users and people who comment. In general, I would say be less official. Take civil society more serious. Do not just focus on the power sphere and its institutions like parties, state-controlled media, and the quasi-official opposition when you're covering a country. That is something that we've certainly learned from the explosion that you outlined of the free press and a sphere of free expression in the last years. Make use of the new, unprecedented access that social media offer. The sense of freedom and empowerment that new media have given to millions of people is an advance for global democracy. It challenges the power of not just presidents and dictators, but also of the old media, And this is a good thing, because it forces us to reform and rethink what we're doing. At the same time, I would say not being edited, like most of the bloggers and people who post stuff on the internet, not being edited is a great thing, but it can also become a trap. Fighting for your own approach, defending your ideas and your piece that you wrote against criticism of your colleagues, debating with them, and with the top brass in your paper about what the story really is about. This is sometimes painful in my job, but it's also educational. It's something good about being a journalist. So power can be corrupting. I think money can be corrupting in journalism, but self-selection can also do the same. Second, what new media can learn from the old media. I think avoiding identity politics. Hear the other side out. Double check. Be mindful that retweeting is not a substitute for your own original thought or observation. Give up the illusion that news is for free. It costs money to investigate. Slow down, stop and think before you step into the fight. And from time to time, shut down your laptop, get out and meet some people. This obviously also goes for journalists because they tend to do the same. What everybody needs to learn, I think, is to realize that there is no small national, ethnic, religious, ideological backyard anymore in which you can just, insult, provoke, slander people without consequences. This is something that should have been learned from the Danish cartoon affair, but has not been learned yet. We're in a new global public sphere, and we are only learning how to deal with it. The same goes for Europe, and this is my last remark. One thing about the European crisis that I have to admit has affected us in Germany, and I think people around Europe even more than, or it has overshadowed the Arab Spring at the moment. In every crisis, I think people tend to choose the reinforcement of their prejudices, especially when they're faced with hardship. But the crisis in Europe has also done a lot of good for the European public sphere. Started caring about each other's elections, fiscal policy, labor market policy, immigration policy long ago. Now we do. And it's not always pleasant. Germans must learn to live with a lot of vilification that they thought was a thing of the past. Adolf Hitler is alive and kicking these days, wherever Angela Merkel sets foot. Italians, for example, must learn to live with harsh criticism of their political choices. Just some days ago, a social democratic contender for the chancellery called the two victors of the Italian elections clowns, and he was snubbed by the Italian media for it, but I mean, come on. He has a point. So this is not always going to be pleasant, but it's a way of realizing that we're in this together. I work on the foreign desk, but the line between foreign and domestic has been blurred. Actually, when it comes to Europe, there is no more foreign policy. It seems to me that is a good thing. Will we be able to have the same kind of relation across the Mediterranean? I certainly hope so, but we're not there yet, and I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you.